I want to take a minute here and talk about the UFC news. I don't know if you've seen Dana White on his Instagram. Have you seen this photo?
I have not.
Silva hit it. That's what it
Oh,
looks like when you sign a $7.7 billion deal. Dana White celebrating that UFC has announced a $1.1 billion average annual value for 7 years. This is because UFC is now going to be on Paramount Plus. It is a part of the Paramount family, which means there will be some events on CBS. Ding dong, pay per view is dead. I mean, for years and years, Vince McMahon was the king of pay per views with Don King. And then later, the UFC became the pay per view juggernaut. And if you've been a UFC fan for a long time, and I count myself among them, you've probably seen and at least heard reports that their pay per view buys had been dwindling. And you want to talk about an about face, you get the revenue locked down and guaranteed. You're no longer hoping you can promote well enough to sell enough. Now it's all included. Respectfully, Paramount Plus was sucking hind teat in the streaming game. And now all the UFC fans, they're going to gravitate to it. This is the exact same methodology that Nick Khan used for WWE to allow Peacock to not just bleed money. Of course, one day removed from the Peacock announcement that WWE is going to ESPN, Peacock announced, "Hey, we're raising our prices," because they know all those WWE fans, they're headed for the entrance, they're headed for the doors. So WWE is on ESPN, and now UFC is on CBS and Paramount Plus, and it's guaranteed. What I think is interesting is two things, Jeff. I want to talk about whether or not you think this is the end of pay per view, because as we're talking about it, Raj Giri is pointing out on Twitter, since you and I have been live and recording, that the TKO president, Mark Shapiro, was on CNBC this morning. And when he was asked about why pay per view is an antiquated model, he says, "What's on pay per view anymore? A few boxing events that start at midnight, some movies on direct TV. It's a real about face." And even AEW, we've seen they've started to offer their pay per views through Amazon, but we've heard the rumor and innuendo that maybe Fight was struggling. It does feel like at this point, AEW and boxing, they're some of the last guys standing in the pay per view biz. But knowing the relationship that AEW has with Warner Brothers Discovery, you got to wonder, are they going to try to get their pay per views either on HBO Max or the Discovery app? We'll have to stay tuned for that. But my goodness, pay per view is done with the UFC. Did you ever think that day would come, Jeff?
well, if you would have, if we had sit down and had kind of a roundtable discussion, I think the natural evolution of these, and I'm glad you led with that, because Paramount boy, I don't even, man, this is where to kind of dive in. You think Larry Ellison wanted to, I think that's his first name. You think Ellison wanted to make a big splash? They just completed the acquisition. Skydance, you know, that whole deal with Sumner Redstone and dating back and Viacom and just when you kind of know that history, and us being on Spike, I did a bunch of research way back in the day, which brought me up to speed and just how the companies kind of came together. And then, Yellowstone, and they've had a lot of success with some hit shows. But for lack of a better word, they got out of the Bellator business. They got out of the boxing business. I have some friends that were integral part of not just Bellator, but Showtime and all that. So in a lot of ways, they had gotten completely out of the fight game for sure in sports in a little way. And when you kind of look at, all right, how's a streaming service going to take their game to another level? Peacocks and just all that. And okay, boy. And when the news came out, you just kind of sit back and say, TKO, they have a $7 billion deal with Paramount. I don't know the exact numbers or the approximate numbers that TKO has with ESPN, with Netflix, and it's all the fight game. They're getting in business with the boxing world. TKO is, and the Saudis. Damn, Conrad, it is kind of fascinating to watch how things are going through. But I think your question is, and I'm trying to stay on point because so many things are going, because the UFC news is so fresh. But look at the all-in numbers of AEW. It tells me the old fundamentals of the industry are, if you create an event that people want to see, there are no excuses that will do. They're going to find a way to watch it. But the maturity, or the brand, as it matures, UFC has been rocking and rolling in pay-per-view world, and you know better than I do, Conrad. Would it be, what year did they really explode? 02, 03, 04? I'm going back, but over
05 is when it blew up.
Okay, so we're at the 20-year mark, and so I'll say their audience is kind of aged out, and so Paramount, the timing of new acquisitions and a lot of money, obviously a boatload of money, and they definitely need to make a big splash, because when you look at Netflix, the streamer, they're in the NFL business now. They're in the WWE business. Netflix isn't going to slow down. They're going to stay in the live event business. And you look at Peacock, and then ESPN and WWE and all kinds of sports. Paramount needed something. So those two coming together at the right time, I guess you could say, created the Dana White cigar shot. Wouldn't you agree, Conrad? The timing of it all, it's Paramount needed something big. They got it.
The value of the deal, Jeff, 7-year deal, 1.1 per year, billion with a B. So it's a $7.7 billion deal, right?
Yep.
You want to guess the market cap of Paramount? 6.6.
Get out of here.
The value of the UFC deal, according to Luke Thomas, is more than the whole company's worth. We're talking about Paramount pushing all their chips to the middle. This is the definition of all in. Fella, we're going to give your outfit a contract that's worth more than we are. That's commitment right there.
So on CBS and their whole, or Paramount / it's one and the same, is going to be branded, TKO is sitting, which means, and TKO has a hefty investment in the wrestling business. It's all good for wrestling.
It's all great for wrestling, Joe.
Because I'm a wrestling guy, so that my brain goes there. But man, oh man, you can have all kinds of thoughts and opinions, but at the end of the day, is this global? Paramount
That's a great question. I do want to point out that they're careful in the phrasing. So I want to dive down into that. They're not saying that they're giving $1.1 billion in cash per year. They're careful to say $1.1 billion average annual value for 7 years. So when you hear average annual value, understand the wordsmithing there. It's not 1.1 in year one. It's going to build. So they will, what I call stair step. So small business owners who have started a business from scratch are probably familiar with this concept when they're starting a new business and they go rent space. So they'll say, hey, I'll pay you $4,000 a month the first year, and $4,500 the second year, and $5,000 the third year. You're trying to deliver to that landlord, hey, you're going to get all your money that you want from me. I just need to build up to it so I can get my business going. So that's probably the way it's structured when they use the phrase average annual value for 7 years. But notice that they say value. They don't say cash, Jeff. So I believe, and nobody's told me this is just brand new news. I'm just reading it and reading between the tea leaves, that when they say value, it's because they're going to say, we're going to promote you on our CBS football games. We're going to promote you on our CBS primetime. We're going to be running commercials on CBS in our primetime categories to promote Paramount Plus and your UFC events. So UFC on Paramount Plus, UFC on CBS, we're going to give you a lot of advertising value as part of that. So I think they would call that in-kind advertising. The idea being, we may say, hey, our rack rate or our rate card on this ad is, I'm making it up, $100,000. And we're going to give you 10 of those reads this week. So there's $1 million. Now, they're not actually going to give the UFC or TKO $1 million, but they're going to give them $1 million worth of ad value. So I don't think it's actual cash on hand 1.1 billion per year that's going there. But no matter how you slice it, this is a home run. But you need this sort of phrasing so you can get Wall Street pumped up and we can jack that stock price up. Don't you think?
Let me ask you, Conrad.
And if you're wondering, the stock's up 7.76% today.
Well, yeah. So
it's up $12.67.
Yep,
The shares are at 175 right now. So just the news of this report and floating 7.7 gets all the headlines, and you get all the Tom, Dick, and Harry investors to start directing some capital there. Everybody's talking about the deal, so it's an easy sell if you're a guy who's trying to churn. So yeah, you're up almost 8% the day of, just hours after the announcement. It's got to be a big deal. I mean, right now, if you're wondering, by the way, this puts TKO at a market cap of $35 billion. $35 billion, Jeff, is the market cap of TKO.
Oh, Ari's smiling big time when On Location delivers his packages every week.
I feel like on some level, you know, if your dad were here, he's an old country guy like my dad. He might say something like, "Them boys are shitting in high cotton."
Yeah,
that's an old Southern phrase right there, isn't it?
Oh yeah, he used to have like the chains that Lawler would take to the ring, but my dad always have a chain, and he'd pull it out of his pocket. And that was one of his kind of nervous habits. He'd twirl it around and twirl it right and then left and right and left. He'd say that. He'd walk over, get him a new chew, find that old nasty cup, sit down. He'd say that, Conrad. That's the kind of line he'd deliver.
SaveWithConrad.com. My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California. I came to Save with Conrad because I've heard Conrad talk about how he helps people all the time save money and the best route to go for getting some mortgages and finances done. And having heard so many different testimonials in the past, it made the most sense to go this route. We were in the market for a new house and we wanted to know what we could afford. So we spoke with Steve and then Diane to get through the pre-approval process to see what we could afford. And then once we were able to understand that aspect of it, that was when we were able to shop around for a house to get a mortgage through Save with Conrad. Everybody on the team was great. Everybody really explained everything fully to where it was more in like layman's terms to where I could understand it as someone not in the business or having shopped around for houses too many times. So being able to understand every step of the process and talking with everyone on the team about that was really, really helpful. And it made me feel really confident that I was going the right route. I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. I know that sometimes people look at it and they go, oh, they're based in Alabama. What could they help me with? But I'm out here in California and they were able to square everything away and get things done really quickly, as opposed to sometimes even people out here don't move as quickly as the Save with Conrad team. So everything was really well done, really efficient, and I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California, and I was able to get into my dream home with SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 212, non-equal housing lender. SaveWithConrad.com.